one of the questions I get is, what about the future of society? Like let's say, for example, I was just talking about the family courts. So if the family courts keep, taking men's children away, keep taking unreasonable amounts of money, keep putting men in jail for accusations that turn out to be false, and then not prosecuting those accusations, those false accusations, right? It's almost like a standard package now in U.S. family courts. Is the man is accused of being violent, and then in the course of the case, they find out he actually wasn't, and then they have to basically take away, they give a restraining order so he can't even go to his own house. That gives her an opportunity, several months, where she can either take over the house or steal all his money, take his car, vandalize his stuff. What's that?
Restraining order?
Yeah, the restraining order just keeps him where he cannot even go into his own house and see his children. So a lot of people, they ask, they say, well, this has to change because, men are deciding not to marry. They're deciding so women will change, And the problem with that argument is, yeah, it is true in the long run. But here's the way I see it. Here's the difference. Is you have two groups, right? You have women who are currently married, and then you have women who are either not born yet or not married. Okay? And those two groups are kind of although they don't realize it, the one is kind of sabotaging the future of the other for their own benefit. So what is happening, and you can see this if you watch any middle-aged women's YouTube channels, or even The View or whatever, you see this kind of voracious anger for men, just absolute hatred, really, and this enjoyment of when they hear a story of a guy, the girl really taking him to cleaners at divorce, right? You see this, you see women just that are older, they're just so fired up about this, they just love it. They just love it, right? And you think, well, that doesn't make sense. Here's the logical problem. The reason why it's not going to change is because you're assuming that these women, and that anybody, including yourself, have concern for all humanity. But that's the problem, is that they're just thinking about their situation. So they can get more money and more freedom and also more emotional satisfaction. They can write, that one scene in The Godfather where he takes out the 5 families or the 4 families' heads, right? And he gets revenge and he's in the church. It's a great scene. I should put it below if anybody hasn't seen it, because it's really a great scene. He's at the church, baptizing his child, and then he's just taking out all his opponents, right? And it's it's a very satisfying scene. It's a really and I think that is really he's got these old angers and the disagreements and everything. It's just all at once. He's just going to devastatingly change the whole chessboard, right? And that's what happens. And when that's over, everything changes. Everything changes. Because if it was just one head, it would be they would get revenge. But when it's all of them, it was such a powerful move and so effective. And it went off well, right? It went off so well that it changed. And this is what history is full of, these kind of turning points where I don't remember the exact reason why, but it was a turning point. And there's a lot of turning points. So, I think with women that are married, I've talked about this before, men being happy, just naturally, pretty happy. I know myself, my brother, my friends, the guys that just kind of stay pretty healthy and stuff, we're just pretty happy, pretty happy with simple things. I like to go walking. I like to do yoga. I like to go sit at a lake. I love to see an old friend. I like to, it's very simple actually, what I like to do, right? But I found women as they get older, not just being satisfied. They're just kind of unhappy. It's really, really, I personally think, from my own experience, I think it's almost a rule, is older women, they're just, I don't know if it's hormones, it might be like physical, where they're just kind of they're angry, they're not satisfied somehow. Even if they kind of got everything in life, right? There's this kind of like dissatisfaction that older women have. And there's this fear or anger or whatever. And the thing is as a man, if you're kind of the focus of that, so they have this, men don't have that. So you don't see men just like divorcing the woman and just like say she has more money and then just taking all her money. And like, you just don't see men with that kind of vigor going after women. And I think there's a lot of reasons, but I think the main reason, we just don't have that kind of anger towards them. We don't harbor like all these grudges. Like women love to hold grudges. They love to remind you, like, 6 years ago on Valentine's Day, you did this. Yeah. And every man that's married knows this, but the thing is, that's fine. Women just kind of, we all are victims, or we are all hostage to our biology, right? So I'm not saying that, women, I mean, I'm not a middle-aged woman, so I don't know, but I think it is kind of something they can't control. So the Valentine's Day stuff I forgive, but what I think is an extreme and not good is when you see women trying to destroy men, like really trying to destroy them. Like there's no doubt about it. They're trying to destroy them. They're making false allegations. They're putting the guy in jail. They're making him so angry. They're riling him up like a dog is on a leash, and you're just constantly shooting rubber bands at him, and you're constantly throwing rocks at him, and you're constantly putting dust in his face, and you're just constantly kicking him and running away. That dog is going to get very upset. But the dog was like super nice when you first went there. But you can say, oh, look at that dog. He's an angry dog, right? Well, the dog was, you see this with kids sometimes with dogs. The dog is like being nice, and the kid just, for some reason, just riles the dog up, right? And it's like, then as a wise parent, you got to say, wait a second. Yeah, the dog did do that. But like, what are you doing, like riling him up, Now, of course, if the dog injures him seriously, then that is more important than the kid riled him up. A dog needs to be able to control himself. The dog has to have some kind of restraint. You can't have a dog just going after a little kid. I'm not saying that. I'm not like defending these people that think their dogs are gods. I'm just saying, as a wise person, you have to look at the dog's reaction and say, wait, was this guy like making his own problems? Like, yes, he was, right? And the dog was pretty restrained, right? Okay, that's a good dog. All right. You tell the kid, hey, don't fucking rile the dog up, because that's what the dog's going to do. What do you expect? It's your responsibility, and you teach the kid. And I think what's happening with women that are going through divorce is it's just become this free-for-all where they're just kicking and riling up the dog constantly. And then just imagine there's like a video camera on the dog, and that is all being used in court. They're not showing all the riling up. They're not showing all the dishonesty. They're not showing the false allegations. They're not showing just everything that's so unfair. So what's happening is men are basically being tortured. That's the bottom line. People talk about money. Fuck money. Money don't really care about money. Men are basically being tortured and destroyed in the West through family courts. And their children are being kidnapped. Like, let's just say straight up, these are basic human rights. And they are being, and men have, like a boiling water and frog in boiling water, have just slowly let this happen. It's got to this point where you have these women who are not only just incredibly full of vitriol, they are being cheered on by other women, right? And you have a vicious system of intelligent lawyers using well, he might have done that. They're using like very slippery legal arguments that it's hard to argue with. And then, and then you got the dog being riled up, and the dog is not acting his best, right? And then it just combines to like the final guillotine, the destruction of the man. And he leaves like just so confused, because the reason why men get married is because they're in love. So it's like men are being basically destroyed for loving people and for wanting to have children. So it's like that. I think that is one of the worst things. I know from my case, when I went through it, it was like, it's one thing to go through something. Like you can go through trauma. Like you might go to World War II and fight in D-Day, right? And there's a lot of like obviously terrible things happening, right? But at least there's some kind of a reason, right? There's some kind of a, this is what they do. This is one thing they did in any terrible prison camp is they always do the same thing. They'll tell the guy, dig a hole. And then he digs a hole. And they say, fill it in. And then he fills it in. And they say, what the fuck are you doing? That hole, I told you to dig a hole. And you can't really say anything. And if you say, well, you told me, it's like they start hitting you, right? And they say, well, get that fucking dirt out of there. And then you get it out of there. And they're like, what in the fuck are you doing? I told you. And it's what it's designed to do. What it's designed to do is to really break you down. Is at the end of the day, you just become yes massa. You know what I mean? Like no matter what they say, you're like, I don't know why it's full of. It's like Cool Hand Luke. It's like I don't know why there's dirt in your hole there, Boss Hog. I'll get that out of there as soon as I can. You idiot. And then he just totally breaks you. And I believe what's happening, and that's why the suicide rate for men is so high, is because men are being like deliberately broken and destroyed. And I think there is actually an enjoyment in it. And I think people have that side to them where they want that sense of power over others. Like you saw this with the fantastic book, Ordinary Men. There's a book that every man should read called Ordinary Men. And it's like how these Polish guards, they basically were forced, Polish soldiers, to basically do the job of the German army. And they were having to shoot innocent people. And what they did was, just for you guys that haven't read it, is they said, look, we have this order. We have this order to shoot all these like innocent people in this field. And then the guys are like, there's basically no way out. We have to do this, right? And they said, well, look, nobody wants to do this. This is what happened. It was like a sports team, basically logic of a sports team. They said, look, nobody wants to do this. So if anybody doesn't want to do this, you guys go over to the truck. And the guys that are willing to do it, you guys do it. And then you put the people on the truck, right? We'll do the shooting. So then some people did it, but then it was so traumatic because it was so unjust and so inhumane and so terrible. It was such a tragedy that the guys that were shooting finally couldn't do it. So then they forced the other guys to come in. And basically they said, okay, we all got to pitch in. Like we all have to do this terrible thing we don't want to do. So like, if you don't do it, then your friend's going to have to do it. So like, basically you have to do it. Like, because otherwise you're basically forcing, it's going to have to happen, right? And so I don't know if they could have ever gotten out of it. Obviously they could have committed suicide. That would be one way out of it. But I don't think they had many options. But anyway, what the book is about is how normal people can do the most terrible things with kind of a sense of duty, almost. Just like, okay, it's got to be done. It's a terrible thing, but it's got to be done. And so you can take the most nice, normal people to do because these were some of the worst atrocities in the war. Like these were really bad. This was terrible stuff. This was not like regular, normal stuff. This was evil, terrible stuff. And it was just like every day, And so that we all are, what the book is about is like, it's part of you as a person. Is you have this part of you that can do the most terrible things. And that's what you need to be enlightened, to know yourself. You have to know that you could be that person, right? That you're not above that as a human. And when you accept that, when you understand that, that will help you not to do it. Because you will have rules. And you in advance, you'll say, wait a second. I'm going down that evil, terrible route. Fuck that. I will do whatever it takes to escape this. You know what I mean? Because I will not, or obviously they could have changed sides and started fighting the Germans. They had options, right? But they didn't understand the evil that it was. They were leading down this path to basically become monsters, right? You have to see it in advance. You have to be wise enough, right? I think what's happening in the courts, in the family courts, is that women And I personally think, and I've said this before, I think that it was abortion. I think that women, they love their own children. It's very difficult. And everybody knows that a fetus is a child. Like, it doesn't take a genius. If you dig down, like if you plant a seed and then you see a tree growing under the ground and then you dig it up and you see it's like sprouting and coming up towards the surface, nobody would argue that's not a tree growing. You wouldn't say, oh, what is that thing? That's a bunch of cells. It's like, no, that is a palm tree. That is an oak tree. That is a orange tree, right? It's just that it's in the early stages of sprouting, right? Nobody says, what is this weird thing down here? We don't know what this is. Nobody knows what this is going to become. This is some random weird thing that we as science have no way of knowing and no way of labeling. So it's just a bunch of cells. Like, everybody knows that a fetus is a human being, right? Anybody that is, like, it's just so obvious, right? And I think that when abortion was made legal, I think that was the beginning of where women put, kind of like the beginning of ordinary men. It started out as an argument for when a woman was, forcibly impregnated, right? And there was a crime that I can't say on YouTube, right? And that crime was committed. That was the argument, is when that crime happens, why should she have to have that criminal's baby? So that was the beginning. So it was like very, very, like, but then, even then, like, somebody could stand up and say, wait a second, is it the child's fault? You know what I mean? Like, should you be prosecuted for your parents' crimes? No. So I would argue that it was a bad argument from the beginning. But anyway, they argued that it was, and a lot of people would agree with that, probably most people. I personally take the side of the kids. I always take the side of the kids. That's just, I think they're the most innocent. I think you always got to go to the side of the kids. Like, once someone's born and they've showed themselves to be good or bad or whatever, then you can judge them on that. But when they're kids, you can't judge them. Like, they haven't done anything wrong. They're pure innocence. That's a definition. I think as humans, I think that's one of our basic tenets, is that we understand that. Once you've done something wrong, you're a little bit guilty. That's what the whole idea in religion of sin is that you're not perfect, right? It's like, and that, you're not, but that a child is. A child is still perfect. They haven't done anything. They're absolutely, if you see little kids, they're just absolutely innocent. They have no idea about anything, and our job is to protect them. So anyway, that was the way that it started. And I believe that women, through that logical argument, led them into what we have today, which is basically mass murder, right? Happening to our own children, right? And it's mostly women. Most murder is done by women, no doubt about it, statistically. Yet nobody will face that. And I think that endless killing of humans, of innocent, their own child, I think over time, that has hardened women. It has nothing to do with men. It has hardened women inside themselves. If you can do that, if you can muster those soldiers that came out of ordinary men, they were not the same happy-go-lucky people. Mm-hmm. They had changed. You watch any of these, like the All Quiet on the Eastern Front, on the Western Front, that book. I have the audiobook, the original audio. It's great. You realize like how traumatic these type of things are. And I think that it's the same thing. We have men going through war, and I think we have women with their own children. But it's all happened very quickly. And I think that it has reached a point where you have women, like, obviously making TikToks saying, oh, I would never do that. And then she's like, no, I'm just joking. I just got back from the abortion clinic. I got rid of mine. They have people bragging about it, celebrating it. And I think the key thing is, you could say they're exceptions. They are exceptions. Relishing that is exceptions. But you need to understand how that was created. It was created by a long process. And some people will always end up being evil. Those people are evil, those women, right? They are the ones who not only are doing it, but they enjoy it. There is an enjoyment in the snuffing out of their own innocent child, right? So they've reached that point where the delusion and the desire for that control and crushing of another person has reached so high that you shouldn't be surprised that they're lying about you in court. Like, don't be surprised about that. Like look at what they do to their own children. There's people who have 8 of them. And the arguments are just crazy. Like, oh, I just don't feel like, I have enough money right now to do it. And then you ask them, well, what about your parents? Did they have money? Oh, they had no money. Would you like to have them to deleted you? And they'll say, oh no, but they can never answer, because the truth is everybody that's alive is glad they're alive. Nobody wishes, oh, I wish they would have just saved a few bucks, not had me. I wish they would have had more leather couches instead of having a cloth couch and me. I wish they would have had a BMW instead of a Plymouth. Yeah, it would have been so much better if they had a nice watch, rather than a G-Shock. So they had me, so they had to have a G-Shock. But I would gladly give up, they would better if they had, a fancy watch that would be impressive to people, right? Nobody thinks that way. Nobody know about their own life. Nobody thinks that way. And that's the problem. That's where the argument totally falls apart. But anyway, back to kind of like the implications of this. So, we have decades of delusion and the taking of innocent human lives in the community of women. And I think they are, and this is what you realize when you study human nature, is that men and women are the same. We're all humans. We're capable of doing stuff. Men could be like this. Like, if you look at war, there's people who come out of a war and they're just evil, right? There's people like taking scalps and taking fingers, and like there are people like they're just like those TikTok videos. There are people who relish in that, right? But I think that is what, personally, this is my own theory. I've never heard it, but I think that is what has taken the humanity of women, is the ignoring, because you have to understand that the bond of a woman has with her child, it is so deep. Men have a very strong bond to children, and that is always made fun of or not taken seriously. The bond of a man, I'll just say this quickly about the bond of a man and a child. The bond of a man and child is very similar to a woman, but it just depends on how much time they spend with the child. So a stay-at-home father will have a very similar bond to a mother. And if the father is always home and the woman is working, at the end of the day, the child will have a bond with the father stronger than the mother. And what they've discovered is it's just time. It's time with the child. That's what the bond is. So the invisible secret bond of women and children is actually more about time. It's just time together. But so women, obviously, in most societies, they spend more time with children. So they bond with the children bond with them. Naturally, that's fine. Now, I think men should always take this seriously. Now that you've heard this, if you have a child, don't believe the troops of like women being so much different than you. If you want your child not to turn against you, you need to spend a lot of time with them. And they will bond with you, and you will bond with them. And that will survive any lies about you. But if you go to work all the time, and you leave that child alone with the woman every single day for every special moment, and then the kid's 12, 13, they're already an adult, basically going into adulthood, it's too late. You need to be with that child at those young ages as a man. They don't tell men this. I'm telling you right now, if you don't do it, you're risking everything. Do not allow your child to be with other people, including your wife, alone all the time. If you want to have a child, you need to be there physically. Find a way to work from home. Find a way to be with that kid. Do not let another person be alone there, because they will bond with them. It doesn't matter if it's here in Thailand, we have a lot of paid caregivers. And the children bond with them. And when that caregiver gets fired or they move, the children are traumatized in a very, very big way, because children do not understand. Yeah. They think it's their mother. They do. Yeah. And when that's taken away, I've seen this in my own family. I'm telling you do not want a caregiver. Do not have a caregiver. I will tell you right now. If you have a kid, spend the time with that kid. You want to physically be there. As a man, and it doesn't matter, do you want to fucking be there? Fuck everybody. Remember this is a very important point. Time with the kid. There's no special bond. It's time. Keep that. It doesn't matter what you're doing together. You could be watching TV. You could be sitting in the car. You could be shopping. You could be in the bank. All that is time together. That's what, and really when you think about it, that's what life is. It's time together. So you trust me a lot more than you did 2 weeks ago when you came here. I can tell you're sitting in the room, you came in. I can tell the difference in you. It's because now we've had time together and you've seen me and you're like, oh, okay. And so it's that time. Yeah. So that time is the key thing. So basically what I think to kind of like, that's like a pointer for any men. Find any way that you can be with your kid more, especially when they're little. It's only a short period of time. These key moments, right? It's basically like, I think personally it's like 0 to like maybe 11. It's like that age. And 0 is not that important because they don't remember. But everybody says like 5 to 11 or something like that is what men, it's the most important time. I personally think that is logical, but I don't think it's true. My experience with children, those times when they're very little, like the girl that I'm helping with, right? Like she is only 16, 17 months, but there is a bond. Last time I saw her, she like grabbed onto me, and her legs like locked onto me, and it was like I was holding her, and she just locked onto me, like not like she had done before. And when she had to go into her house, and I was going home, that kid like cried like I hadn't hurt her. So the bond when they're little is very important. Don't trust people just going on logic. Remember, we're emotional. Like it's like some things you can never know for sure. Don't take a chance with your kid. Too important. Make sure you're there from the beginning. Changing the diapers, taking them on the stroller, making sure they're not in the sun. Just doing all that dumb stuff. So back to the final, like what this whole thing is leading up to. So basically, the degradation of the humanity of women has been a slow process. And now you have a thing where some women are really, truly just out to get you. Like true. Like they will just date you to destroy you. And women will talk about this on TikTok. They'll say, I just dated him to destroy him. He was like a confident guy, getting all the girls. I thought to myself, women will literally with their own voice say that. Like a star or whatever. Like he was like the alpha guy. I was going to take him down.
It's power, right?
It's power. It's power, but it's not just power. It is enjoying. It's the cruelty. So it's the people that, it's like in the war for the men. It's the people that were taking the fingers and the scalps. It was the people. It was the people who enjoyed the K word. Okay, so if you're listening to any soldiers, go to listen to Vietnam or whatever, they'll say 80% of people will not shoot to kill. Yeah. 80%. Okay, so let's say there's 20% in the beginning of the war. Let's just say 20. 20%. Of those 20%, most of those people are doing it for logical reasons. A, because they want to go home. B, because they don't want to die. They don't want to do it. They have no desire to do it, but they see, and I put myself in this category, they see that if they don't do it, they themselves will be killed. And so it's like an impossible choice. They have to choose to live, right, as a human. That is your final thing, and it's same for your opponent. At the end of the day, you have to choose to live. That's it. Unless you're protecting a child. There are other things, but if it's another man, no. You have to live, period. Okay, that's it. And that is almost your imperative for your genes. Like, I'm not saying, like, it's terrible. Like, it's of course it's a terrible situation you don't want to be in, but at the end of the day, you got to look at what's right and wrong as a wise man. You have to give your son advice. You got to tell him, son, this is what you need to do. Live. You need to live. You need to live. But there's another percentage, and you ask any soldier, and I mean any soldier who's experienced in warfare, and you say, what about, so there's 20%. Some of them, a lot of them, are just doing it to go home to survive. What about the other ones? What about the other ones that enjoy it? And he's like, and they will tell you, watch any interview, guys. They'll be like, oh yeah. They'll say, yeah, there was the guys who enjoyed it. And they say, yeah, I love to have those guys in my troop. Because they helped him to achieve his goal of going home. Yeah. Because they actually enjoyed it. And their job was to do that. So, obviously, but the thing is, they always treated those guys differently. If you read any book about Vietnam, the guys who came home with a certain look on their face and a bunch of scalps, nobody would fucking talk to them for a few days after they got back, because they knew he could take them out. He was enjoying it. Yeah. That man they would let him be alone for a few days, and then he would kind of come back to his humanity enough that he could be part of the group. And they would as soon as they saw that look gone in his eyes, they would talk to him again. So what I'm saying is that those ones on TikTok, that's what they are. They're like the guy with the scalps. They enjoy, it's not about power. No, that's a big mistake. They enjoy the K. They enjoy the screams. They enjoy that feeling that they get. And this is the big thing. I just going to add this thing in to kind of, one of the things I learned when I went to AA is I said, they were talking about drinking and everything. And they said, one guy said, it made a lot of sense to me. They said, what's the difference between a person who becomes alcoholic who isn't? And he said, the difference for me, and again, this is not like any kind of diagnosis. This is just a very similar kind of thing. And it made perfect sense to me. He said, my wife, I asked her why she doesn't drink more. And she said, well, when I drink, I get dizzy. I don't feel good. My stomach's upset. And I feel confused. And the next day I'm tired. And then he said, well, wait a second. When I drink, all my problems go away. And I feel so fucking great. And then he's like shocked that not everybody feels that way when they drink. Not everybody feels absolutely fantastic when they drink. Like a lot of people, they feel sick. They don't feel good. And I realized it's the same with everything. Like when I go fishing, I don't like killing fish. Okay, I will eat meat. I mean, I'm a hypocrite. But I don't want to, I'm not into, there is no enjoyment in killing. I appreciate that it's real. I understand logically what I'm doing. I understand it's being done on my behalf. But I don't want to kill a fish, even a fish. I have no desire to kill a fish, right? And for me, when I fish, not only do I really not enjoy that, but also I don't like anything about it. I don't like getting poked in the finger by the hook. I don't like watching them sit there in the thing slowly dying. The whole thing sucks. Okay, I don't like fishing, right? And I'm not even a good fisherman. Which probably doesn't surprise you, right? Because I hate it, right? Yeah. But then this one guy told me, he goes, oh my God. He goes, fishing for me, he said, it's like a totally different world. Like I'm with my wife, I'm with my friends, I'm working. And then finally I get a chance to go fishing. And he said, I have such peace when I'm there. And I just find myself dreaming and thinking. And I was like, no way. I was thinking that's kind of the way I feel when I drink. Kind of the same way. I feel great, I feel really fucking great, And even the hangover, that doesn't bother me. I just feel like it's just like something you got to go through. It's kind of like when you lift weights, you're going to have sore muscles. That's the way I looked at hangovers. It's like, yeah, I'll be a little bit sore, but whatever, it's worth it, right? So that's kind of like the way I thought. Now, I'm not saying this is like any kind of diagnosis. So, but I'm just saying for myself. And I think it's the same way with all these things we're talking about. To understand yourself, look at the things you enjoy. Look at the things that give you peace. Look at the things that you relish, right? And I think that you will see right, you will see your dark side if you notice this. If you find yourself watching videos like Darwin Awards of people riding their bicycles into holes all the time, you have to accept that you enjoy that. And I'm not saying you're the same as a soldier. Definitely you're not. That's a totally different thing. But there is a part of humanity that enjoys. That's why these videos exist. That's why the Darwin Awards exist. Like, you just watch a stupid person just take themselves out. There's something in humans, right? So a lot of like my message is that it's not that men are good or women are good or men are bad or women are bad. It's like knowing the truth about yourself, setting up guardrails so that you don't go off the edge, being honest with yourself about your, because whatever you're born with, right? Living with it. You only have one life. You have to enjoy it. Accept yourself, no matter where you are on the spectrum. But what I think is not being appreciated is that women are exactly the same as men. Exactly. And nobody will accept that courts are being used, family courts are being used as a way to basically kill men. Because men commit suicide while they're being divorced. It's a very common thing. They get lied about, they get everything taken away, they lose their friends, sometimes they lose their job, the family turns against them, they lose their money, and a lot of guys, that's just too much for them. And so the suicide rate is huge while they're in family courts, and it's very big afterwards. And I think I personally think it's the reason. It's why men, it's like losing your job, all these things. These are like the key stress indicators for men, because we attach ourselves to our profession, right? So when you lose your family, you lose your job, you lose your house, you know what I mean? What do you have to live for as a man, right? It's very difficult. Now, I personally am very proud of the fact that I can handle anything. So I'm like, bring it on. Take it all away. Like, I'm going to fucking come out stronger. And this is the way I am. Like, I take it as a challenge. I take life as a challenge. And I love it. And people say, oh, don't ask for like negative things. I was like, yeah, bring it on. Fuck it. I already know myself. I've been through so much. Like, nothing is going to intimidate me. Like, I'm just, bring it on. Let's go. Yeah. And that is my attitude. I got that as a kid. When I was being bullied, basically by somebody I won't say, but, and I realized there was no point in giving up to bullies because they're just going to get worse. So I realized, oh my God, like, I want to give up. Of course, I wasn't not strong when I was a kid, but then as a kid, I was smart enough to realize, wait, there's no point. When you give up, they just punish you more. Like, you just better off just fucking just being a hard ass and just never giving up and going into every situation like, oh, you wanted to do this to me? Well, let's get it on. And it's not because you're some super strong, wise guy. You just see that type of person is going to continue in like attacking you. And so with that type of person, you have to say, bring it on. And that's become my attitude, is I won't let people intimidate me. And again, it's not because I'm tough or anything. I just realize it doesn't work. It doesn't achieve what I want. What I want is peace and to be left alone and feel good about myself. It doesn't work. Yeah. It just opens a door to all kinds of new pain. So I realized I'd rather go down in flames than go down that dark where I'm now selling out myself. Yeah. And I realized that it wasn't that scary in life. Like, there isn't that much that's going to happen. Like, people often don't want to go that final step anyway. So always stand up for yourself. That's always been my kind of like my learnings from it as a young boy. And they've stuck with me. They've really stuck with me. And people misinterpret that as some kind of bravery. It's just logic. I learned that there's certain kind of people, you fucking got to stand up. There's no fucking way around it. They're not going to give up, right? Yeah. And so anyway, like, there's so many life lessons in this one. But the bottom line is that, what were we saying in the very beginning before we started?
We're talking about the kids kicking dogs.
Before that, like, let me think here. Let me think through the logic. So we have a situation. Oh yeah. So here's the deal. All this is leading up to this. So some women are winning, okay, from the current situation. And some women are going to lose in the future. Okay. So some women are married now. They've been properly marinated in this kind of enjoyment of the destruction of man. There's really something very empowering when a woman destroys a man, because men are so powerful. And there's something that women have always enjoyed about it. It's like, I got him on his knees. And that's why women love sex. Because all of a sudden the guy is like, and I'm talking the good side of women. Like, they love when you're just suddenly at their, like, you'll just do anything for them. Like, oh, I want that pussy, And that's natural. You're so horny, and they look at you and they're blowing you. Girls love that feeling of power when they're blowing a guy. It's because all of a sudden this big, strong guy is totally, they're controlling him totally. And I really say the good side of women, because this is a dynamic that is part of the act of sex. It's an enjoyment. The men enjoy it too. The men enjoy letting down their guard and letting the woman, control them. And they relax into it because they trust the woman. This is historically. At the end of the day, it all comes out in the wash, right? The man gives her something that she can't give herself, and she feels a bond for him, and then that leads to children and families and all kinds of good shit, But in the moment, it is a feeling of power for women. And you ask any young women about it, they'll always tell you that, is they love that feeling of power. So there's good things in power. There's things that kind of work, and there's things where power can become evil. And so what we have today is evil running amok. And the problem, the reason why it won't stop, to answer the original question, is that the people that have the opportunity, who are they? They're married women. So they're married, and by destroying the man and by taking his money, they win. Now, what's going to happen after that? Are they concerned about that? No, because they win. They're 45. They get a couple $1,000,000. They're done. They don't have to worry about anything until they're done. And it's the same with criminals. Criminals, of course, you go into a neighborhood with no crime. You go in and start shooting up stores, robbing everybody. You know life isn't going to be as good after that. Those stores have to now put, new security features. That your grandmother's not going to walk in and buy some milk. Now all of a sudden there's going to be bars on the doors. It's going to be closed after a certain time. That life is going to get worse for your grandma and everything. But you need that money so bad. You want it so bad. You're going to take it for yourself, despite the fact that society is going to be worse off for it, your neighborhood. This is what women are doing. So the women that are in charge, or the ones that are married, have something to benefit. And they've been given all the tools to destroy men and take their money. And they're just like, fuck it, burn it to the ground. The women that are going to be hurt the most is when men are naturally, with every reaction, there's an equal and opposite reaction. Men will no longer sleepwalk into marriage, into relationships, into children with women, right? Yeah. And this is definitely going to happen. Like this is long term is going to happen. And guys are always making these channels like, oh, they're going to learn. Don't expect it. I'm just telling you, long-term vision, don't look for it. What you need to know, long-term, 100 years later, 500 years later, they're going to look back on this time as insanity. And women will totally turn. But never forget that people don't change in their lifetime. It'll be the next generation of people. So in another 30 years, they'll start to reevaluate what women have done to marriage and children and population growth and society. But never expect people to change. So my message to you as a man is, be realistic. If, like when the Jim Crow laws were taken away, people still had the same ideas about different races. It didn't change. It wasn't until 1 or 2 generations later that you had mixing, you had people, friends of different races. It took years, it took decades. It took generations. The people just can't change. So never as a young man, you think, oh yeah, things are going to change. They will change. And you are right. But it won't be in the people that are alive today. Because they have too much ego at stake. And if you need any good example of that, you look at Albert Einstein. He wouldn't believe in quantum theory because he had his theory of relativity, a couple other ones, and quantum theory didn't match with his laws of physics. Quantum materials act differently at a small scale than the laws of physics, which is what he was about, was the law of kind of larger physics, visible physics. He wasn't the quantum level. And so he could never, he was smart enough, I assume he was smart enough to understand the quantum, the quantum theory, but he just couldn't do it. And so he went to his death, not calling it spooky action at a distance. That's what he called quantum theory. Basically totally like making fun of it. Like, yeah, right, spooky. Spooky was like a very derogatory term. Spooky action at a distance, right?
Science.
Yeah, it was like how two quantum, anyway, he couldn't accept it, right? And I think you need to understand as a man is, this will change, but my final thing to you is not in your lifetime. You need to act. You need to act. Your life is short. Things will not change. Not for you, not in reality. Okay? They're not going to change. We have very evil forces destroying anything you could build in the West with a woman. And it is reality. And it will continue. So what can you do? That's when you have to look at the options of being free, traveling. They always had like confirmed bachelors in the old days, right? They were like guys who just enjoyed being single, And those confirmed bachelors got laid. They did get laid. Like, it wasn't like they were, they didn't get anything, right? As men, we have to say, okay, we know the situation, so how can we live life in the most kick-ass way, given the parameters that we won't do exactly what our grandparents did? And then you realize, like, fuck, there's always been these great options for men that aren't marriage.
Yeah.
Like, marriage isn't always the answer. It's one form of happiness for men. Men enjoy travel. They enjoy adventure. They like really do. And even married men, they always kind of think, I wish I would have fucking done more. Like they always wonder. Married men, there's such a, what I'm saying is you're not getting second best. In fact, listening to this right now, you might be getting first best, actually, for a man. I'm not saying it's best for society and all that, but you're not in charge of that. You're in charge of your life. Just like the guy who doesn't want to take out the opposing soldier but has to go home. Or, you're in a situation where you need to make a choice. You need to make the wisest choice. And the choice is fucking freedom and happiness. And take advantage of all the things that are outside. And then you realize, like, life is fucking great. Like, the system crashes. System's not in your favor. And you just say, fuck it. Like, goddamn, I can have a good life. Like, I'm having a good life already. 2 weeks, you've been here. When I got here, I was like, when I started like getting away from the bonds of the West, I realized I had discovered something. It was pre-internet. There was no one telling me anything. There was no books. There was no YouTube. But I realized like I had a freedom that was just, and there was just hotter girls and just more options. And like I realized that the West had fallen into shitty food and sedentary lifestyles and a lot of negative things the West, even back then in the 80s, had fallen into. And I realized that. The East, they were eating vegetables. They were walking upstairs. They weren't using escalators back then. And then people were all skinny. And I thought, that's a better way to live. And I looked at Buddhism as opposed, or like Buddhist concepts that you see here in Asia. And I thought they were wiser than a lot of the Western concepts. They make more sense to me. And I realized, God, there's so much wisdom here. There's so much better food, better girls. Asia's so full of like waterfalls and rivers and mountains and excitement. And like, there's so much to see. And I've already seen a lot of the West. I realized like, fuck, I'm actually, even though some people looked at me as stunted because I was never married, right? I realized that they were all jealous of me. And it took me a long time to understand why. It's because I always had that zest for life. So I think I'm going to end on this. The choice you want to make is to always have that zest. Whatever it takes for you to get that. You can't have A, so what is B? And then a lot of times, man, it's better than your original choice, actually. Actually, in this case, I personally would never trade my life for what I could have had. And I'm not kidding. Like, I'm not saying that for a channel. And I understand the complications. Like, I had a very good girl. I talked about her, when I was 19. And she's now, like, still a good girl. Like, we're still friends, actually. Got 5 kids. She's like she's turned out to be a great wife, a great girl. Like, healthy, still looks decent for, the way she did, like, pretty good for her age, Like, she's held up well, right? And even with this girl who was a 1 in a million, she really was. I am happy. I'm happy that she dumped me because it pushed me, because I really loved her and wanted to get married when I was young. I was really a conservative type of guy. I really thought that was the best decision, and her dumping me forced me. Well, at the time, I thought it was the worst thing, right? But now it forced me to really explore life, and obviously you guys know all the things I've done. I've done them because I wanted to do them. Yeah. Learning languages, traveling, getting in shape, making friends, building a life that is just like constant adventure, And so that's what I say to you is sometimes when you lose something, when someone forces you into something, your brain will tell you that was the best and plan B is less. But it's actually not true. It's what it is you get into this thinking of wanting what you can't have. You tell me I can't have it. You tell a kid he can't have this fucking bottle or whatever, then he wants it. That's how we are too. But sometimes it's just some plastic bottle. There's really not as much as you think there. So the standard life that you would have lived, be grateful for the people that brought you to this point. Be grateful for the women that dumped you. Be grateful because now you are a guy living a life of freedom and money and zest and health and laughter and friendship. And unknowns. Adventure. Yeah, adventure and constantly learning new things. Mm-hmm. Constantly pushing the boundaries of your mind, you know what I mean? Like all these things, right? That's the life I want. Yeah. All right, guys. Thanks for listening. I hope that's been helpful. And just FYI, Japan Summit's got 30 guys now. It's fucking getting huge. If you guys want to come, this is going to be, and I'm not kidding, this is going to be an adventure. 3 weeks together after the summit. You got to come to the summit to come to the trip. We're going to do the summit in Tokyo, 21st, 22nd, 23rd of July, next month. And then we're going to do the trip. Yep. So I won't say any more. All right, guys. Thank you.